The Mosteiro de Alcobaca. This massive medieval monastery in Alcobaça is one of the most important historical monuments in Portugal. Its Baroque facade dates back to the 18th century. It is the focal point of the magnificent monastery's 220-metre-wide exterior. In comparison with its Baroque portal, the interior of the church is rather modest, yet still elegant, and with remarkably generous dimensions. The creative influence of the monastery's fraternity is still evident. The interior is one of the most beautiful examples of Gothic Cistercian design. The 20-metre-high ceiling is crowned by pointed cupolas. Conversely, it's also worth taking a look at the floor of the church, as it covers several ancient graves. Compared to the rest of the church's interior, today's royal pantheon is still relatively young. The tomb hall dates back to the 18th century. Queen Maria I instigated this dignified burial place for the Portuguese monarchs when she visited the monastery in 1786. Shortly after this, the splendid Gothic sarcophaguses of Inês de Castro and King Pedro I were installed in the church. Here, according to the king's final request, each of the coffins was situated facing the other in order that the two lovers could gaze at each other until their resurrection. The colourful and legendary history of the Santa Maria de Alcobaça monastery is illustrated on beautiful traditional tiles known as azulejos. King Afonso Henriques promised the construction of the Cistercian monastery in 1147 following a decisive victory over the Moors. He kept his word, and 6 years after his military triumph, the first construction work on the monastery began. The majority of the buildings were completed in 1222, although the monastery's kitchen and its impressive chimney were added in the 18th century. Nothing was left to chance. The kitchen even had its own supply of fresh water. In the course of time, A number of generous royal gifts and donations transformed the monastery into one of the most wealthy and important monasteries in Europe. The influence of the Cistercians continued to grow until the fraternity extended to a total of 13 small towns and villages with 4 accesses to the sea. The 14th century was the most prolific period in the financial history of the Alcobaça monastery. But the steady growth of the monastic estates, their wealth, and also the misuse of power by several abbots aroused much envy and malevolence. The increasing tirade of complaints from the region's farms and villages concerning the conduct of the abbots subsequently destroyed the power of the monks. From that time on, abbots were appointed solely by the king and not by the monks. However, the monastery's further development remained unaffected by this. After the main church building, Chapter Hall was one of the fraternity's most important buildings. Prior to royal intervention, the monastery's abbots were elected here. The cloister was built in the 15th century at the time of King Dinis. Due to the vow of silence, this building was known as the Silent Cloister. Four magnificent galleries surround its inner courtyard. Originally an older and more modest cloister was once located here. Even though the new building ordered by King Dinis was more elaborate, it still exudes the time-honoured austerity demanded by the Cistercian community. The monastery retained its unique position as the country's religious and spiritual centre right up until the 18th century. Only Napoleon's armies brought an end to its golden years of cultural and economic success. They plundered the monastery and set fire to the choral area of the church. When the religious fraternities were disbanded in 1834, the Mosteiro de Alcobaca was abandoned by its monks. But its treasures and much of its age-old splendour have been preserved to the present day.